Hello, welcome to our kitchen. I'm here today. I'm trying to break down the recipe for Gideon's Bakehouse chocolate chip cookies gluten-free because I know a lot of people are not able to try what they offer there. They don't have a gluten-free cookie option, and the cookies are really good, and I kind of have been challenging myself to get as close to their recipe as possible, and I'm not gonna lie, it's tricky, but I think I've gotten pretty close, so I'm going to share with you what I've come up with. I actually picked up a scale for this whole procedure because the cookies themselves, you have to get them to be a certain size, and I had no idea how big they were. They're very big. So I got this to measure it out, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to be like really official and measure out the ingredients by grams because it just gives you a more accurate baking experience, and that's what I was really going for. So I picked up a scale. It was 15 bucks at Publix. You can buy them online, but it's kind of fun. It makes the steps take a little longer, but I think it would be worth it if you're doing a specific recipe like this, and especially because the flour combinations of this are very, you have to get it down because the gluten-free balance is a tricky one. So let me show you what I added for the gluten-free flours. All right, so first you want to mix up your dry ingredients. You're going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1.5 cups of gluten-free measure for measure flour, and 1/3 cup of almond flour. And we also added 1/3 cup of oat flour. So I realized oat flour was going to be a good addition to the recipe because gluten-free flour is pretty bland. So the almond flour and the oat flour adds like a nuttiness and a kind of a buttery texture in addition to the butter that is in the recipe, but it adds a nice flavor to it. So if you don't have oat flour, which I did not today, I just pulsed my own gluten-free oats in the blender and made my own oat flour, which you could do too. So from what I understand, the Gideon's Bakehouse chocolate chip cookie recipe has rye flour in it, in addition to the other flours they have, and you can't use rye flour in a gluten-free recipe. So I was doing a little taste testing and I realized that the rye flour kind of gives a little bit of like a nutmeg flavor, so I decided to add 1/8 teaspoon of nutmeg and 1/8 teaspoon of cinnamon just to add that little flavor combo in there. All right, so now I'm going to stir all my dry ingredients. The butter, of course, is an important part of a chocolate chip cookie, and I'm using a salted butter in this recipe. What I realized is you have to brown half of the butter before you mix the butters with the sugars, which is really different than a typical cookie recipe. But it adds like a nuttiness and sort of a caramel kind of flavor to it, and it also changes the color. It gives a deeper color to the cookie, which is what you get in a Gideon's cookie too. So it smells really good also. I don't know if you know how to brown butter, but I'll show you. I'm gonna take half the stick of butter, and you wanna cut the pieces that you're gonna brown into equal size pieces because you want it to melt at the same rate. I have this really cute little butter melting pan. We do all sorts of things with this one, but it's perfect because it's just the right size for this amount. And you want a light colored pan. It doesn't have to be this size. You could just have a smaller saucepan, light colored, not a dark bottom pan. That affects the temperature and how it melts and everything. You're gonna go for a medium heat on the butter, and you're gonna wanna stir this once it starts to heat up. And keep stirring slowly until it gets to where it needs to be, which is gonna take, it's at least 5 minutes. So it's a little bit of a labor of love here, but it's an important part for the recipe. So butter's gonna turn golden brown. The foam will slightly subside and the milk solids in the bottom of the pan will toast. So that's when you're gonna get your brown color. All right, so that's what it looks like. And then you have to cool it down. So I put the mixing bowl inside an ice bath. I'm gonna mix it now to cool it down. I just wanna emphasize that you cool your butter down after you brown it because the first time I did it, first of all, it melts the brown sugar too quick. It just changes the texture of the whole thing, but also you're adding an egg to the mix. So if your butter is still hot with the sugars, it's gonna cook your egg, screws everything up. Cool it down. So you cut up the other half a stick of butter and you're gonna add that to the mixer. We're adding a 1/2 cup of dark brown sugar and 1/4 cup of white sugar. So the first time I tried to make Gideon's cookies, I picked up some of this. It's vanilla bean paste, and it's pretty serious stuff. It smells amazing. It's got those little specks of vanilla, which I really like how it looks. I noticed that a lot of the Gideon's cookies had the vanilla specks in there, so it made me really want to get some for this. Plus, it's just really tasty, and I swear all of the Gideon's cookies, they really amp up all of the extracts that they use. I think they just use an extra amount to give it that real punch of flavor. So for this recipe, I'm doing 2 teaspoons of the vanilla paste. If you don't have this and don't want to get it, you can just use a really good quality vanilla extract. All right, we're also adding 1 large egg. And we're gonna whip this up for 3 minutes. You want it nice and fluffy. All right, so we're gonna add the flour mixture now. So mix till just combined. All right, so you have the milk chocolate chips and the semi-sweet. You definitely want both. And what's funny is these ones are slightly bigger, and you'll notice that on the Gideon's cookies when they put them on the top. The milk chocolate ones are a little bigger than these ones. So you're gonna do 1/2 cup of each of these, and then you're gonna save more for the top of the cookie, which is a lot of chocolate, a lot. All right, so the whole reason I got the scale was so we can measure out the cookie to be 6 ounces precisely. So that's what we're gonna do. Nope, not even close. You think it's big enough? Go bigger. So now that we have it measured out, you're just gonna form it into a nice meatball size thing of dough. And then you push it into the chocolate chips. So we mix together the milk and the semi-sweet chocolate chips in here. Try to get the bottom so there's not much chocolate on the bottom. So when you go to bake it, it doesn't burn. So what I didn't realize was you actually have to freeze the dough for 24 hours before you bake them. That sort of solidifies the cookie in its shape. It also freezes all the chocolate chips, so when you bake them, they don't melt. Because if you notice the Gideon's cookies, I was always like, do they add them at the end? How come that melted? It's because they were frozen when they baked them. As you can see, this is kind of like 1/2 of a recipe. I've been making so many that I figured I'd go with half recipes, so we were only tasting so many. But a half recipe only makes 5 cookies. So the full recipe is gonna make 10 cookies, but they're like 1/2 pound a cookie. So really you're eating like at least 2 cookies per cookie. So you wanna freeze it for 24 hours before you bake it, and you pull it out of the freezer, put it right onto a baking sheet. Set your oven to 385 when you're ready to bake, and bake them for 16 minutes. Remember, it's a giant ball of cookie. So the last step when the cookies come out of the oven is to sprinkle some Celtic sea salt or some really nice flaky sea salt on the top of it. That really makes a big difference. So just a healthy pinch and sprinkle it around down the line. You're gonna wanna let them come to room temperature on the countertop, and then you need to refrigerate them for 2 more hours before enjoying them. You can take them out. You could eat them right away, but I recommend letting them come back to room temperature before breaking in. This whole recipe is just all about waiting. You have the 24 hours of rest time in the freezer. Then you have to cook them for a longer period of time. You have to cool them and then recool them and then thaw them. It's so many steps, but that adds to, I guess, the suspense and the experience. But that's, I mean, it's a labor of love, these kind of cookies. So this is the moment you guys have been waiting for. Let's break them open and check them out. All right, here's the moment of truth. Let's break this open. The texture of these cookies is different. It has a more cookie dough sort of consistency in the middle. So it's not like a crispy sort of cookie. And because it's so thick, it's not necessarily a chewy cookie either. They're different. They do weigh like 1/2 pound. There's like a ton of chocolate in it. And if you've ever had a Gideon's cookie, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you hadn't, well, this is a pretty exciting way to make a chocolate chip cookie gluten-free, I would say. I would love to know if you've tried to make a Gideon's gluten-free version. I'm really curious to see what other people's take is on this, because I wasn't finding really anything online for recipes for gluten-free. So I feel like I'm kind of like stabbing in the dark here. If you do try the recipe, I would love to hear what you think about it. Be sure to leave it in the comments. And if you have something from Disney, a Disney snack or dessert, something that you would love to try gluten-free but haven't yet, maybe I can try another recipe. I do have some other ones that I've tried from different Disney cookbooks and recipes, from stuff that you can get in the parks. And some pretty good success there. So I'll share those with you guys coming up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoy some cookies, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps our channel out. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you guys later.